My name is Dr. Raedell Boateng, and I am the director of the Network for EdWork at TAF. That means I get to lead our work in supporting our BIPOC teachers and leaders. Okay, so the Network for EdWork supports teachers and leaders of color through our 3 programs. So our first program is the Martinez Fellowship. The Martinez Fellowship focuses on early career educator support. Our programming also seeks to support our veteran fellows who are further along in their teaching careers, and we have some leadership opportunities that we have to support their development as well. Our second program is the Education Encounter, and that focuses on specifically supporting leaders of color in education. So that includes school administrators, district leadership, university partners, particularly folks who work in teacher preparation programs, and then even some nonprofit leaders who work in education in the nonprofit field. And then the third program is Ally Engagement, which is a newer program under the Network for EdWork. And Ally Engagement is actually about supporting white leaders to be transformative in their practice. And even though the Network for EdWork is focused on how do we recruit and retain teachers and leaders of color, an important part of that process is ensuring that their peers and those who lead them are also getting that development. And so that's where the role of Ally Engagement comes in.
My name is Tuan, and I'm the Dean of the College of Education at the University of Washington, a proud board member of TAF, and the University of Washington College of Education is a partner of TAF's. So TAF's Network for EdWork is special because it attends to the entirety of a candidate's experiences, not just their intellectual development, but their wellness and their identity and their sense of passion around the work. So it is unique in this nation in terms of paying attention to all those pieces. It's important to my college to be part of the TAF network because it means we're in a community with other like-minded folks who are deeply committed to this work. We share best practices, and we have community together.
My name's Jerome Hunter. I'm a Martinez Fellow, former teacher, current co-founder of Seattle School for Boys, and I'm also a community organizer. I applied to the Martinez Fellowship because of its authentic approach to education. I liked the mission to eliminate race-based disparities within education, and I just thought that this was an authentic way to get involved and make real change in education.
I'm Sydney Ha, Martinez Fellow, Cohort 11. I currently work at Chinook Middle School as a SPED teacher. Initially, Martinez Fellowship program was pitched to me as a way to really support myself through grad school financially. And then diving into it, just realizing just how much support and the sense of community that was there. I think that was the biggest thing that I really learned and was able to take away from it, and just realize that there's a space for me that I can get support even more than just financial.
It's no surprise, really, for those of us who are in education that schools are historically and predominantly white spaces with rules for engagement that are both implicit as well as explicit. And so for teachers of color to be entering those spaces and to feel as though they can bring their whole selves is risky. And yet that's what we need them to do because they model it for our students of color.
Liberation pedagogy is, as it states, it's a pedagogy about how do you be and lead as liberated. And so as a pedagogy, it's about giving each person the opportunity to consider their own personal journey towards liberation in their teaching practice and their leading practice, which in the TAF context includes recognizing the ways that systemic oppression shows up, and we have internalized that as people of color. Finding resources and tools to help us undo that. And then when the undoing happens, it's important to be able to have ways of being that replace that so you don't revert back to being who you are when you feel oppressed. So recognizing, undoing, replacing, and then the last part is engaging other people in the process, right? In order for this to be sustainable, in order for change to be real and impactful and to last, we have to be able to bring other people along in the process. And because it's a pedagogy and it's not prescriptive, it says that there is room for everybody to show up in that as they are, but here's also a framework for us to be able to communicate and work together around that. Someone who is leading liberated means that they're able to thrive in predominantly white spaces. Often in those spaces, people of color, leaders of color, sometimes even without thinking about it, conform to certain ways of being because that's what they've been socialized to do, and then start to recognize that that feels oppressive or that doesn't feel okay. And so being able to thrive in those spaces is an important component of being able to, of leading liberated. A second thing I think is important to consider is knowing when to self-preserve and when to step in, right? When you are a leader and you recognize things and you are very socio-culturally aware and critically conscious, it's almost like every minute you could recognize something that's oppressive, something racist, something sexist that's happening. And that can be overwhelming and it can be emotionally, psychologically, physically exhausting. So a liberated leader also knows when to say, hey, I'm gonna step in, I'm gonna say something about this, versus when they should say, I'm gonna pull back, I'm gonna self-preserve because in this moment I need to take care of me. Another important component of leading liberated is intentionally building community, a community of people who are committed to similar things as you in trying to transform systems, trying to make education, trying to make classrooms more equitable places.
As more teachers of color are in public schools, it starts to change the culture and the dynamic of those schools. It starts to make a space where bringing your whole self, and in this case, your identity, your culture, your background, into that space acceptable and part of the norm, which then creates that expectation and that sense of comfort for students of color.
The events of the past year, in addition to the current racial climate, have really energized me to not only share my personal story and encounters with racism, but also connect that to folks in the classroom, including faculty, but especially students. From that approach, it allows us to have these open and honest discussions around social justice, social issues, and begin to build a coalition, not only in the community, in the schools, and more importantly, within our student body.
As a teacher of color, it's not often that we are even represented in schools. Especially for me growing up, I can name like a handful of teachers that I felt even represented me. So having a space and just like for me seeing just the teachers of color around me and just seeing that, oh wow, I'm not alone in this. There are others who look like me, experience things the same way as I did. We're here to support each other, and that's like, for me, what that space is. Being a half Cambodian, half Hmong male teacher, oftentimes I've rarely seen students who even know what those ethnicities are, and just a sense of curiosity of that. And for me, when it comes to that, like I think of my role as more so than just simply existing, but more so like I have to make these connections with students.
It's a really exciting time in the Network for EdWork because we are currently growing and expanding. We are searching for a program manager for ally engagement, so someone who will lead the work of liberation pedagogy for white leaders who will be a part of our programming. We are also getting ready to launch into some district partnerships, which is something that TAF is really familiar with, but the Network for EdWork, this is new for us. And so we're saying districts, partner with us, work with us. We want to send you fellows. We want to share what we are learning and what we are doing around leadership and being liberated and creating systems that make teachers and leaders of color want to come and want to stay. And so deepening those partnerships so that there is collaboration across universities, across teacher preparation programs to help eliminate some of the barriers that make it challenging for teachers and leaders of color to come into and stay in education. And that includes financial barriers, among others.